Evening, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all had a safe and happy New Year's Eve and brought in the new year with some motivation and positivity. And in today's video, we are going to be diving into the new 2026 tennis season, which starts tonight in just about an hour with the United Cup, and we'll bring in some new 250 level tournaments for both the ATP and WTA tours. So in today's video, we'll just be giving our take about what we can expect, about what I predict will happen, and also my reactions to some recent news stories that have broken out in the last few weeks. And to start off, we'll talk about Alcaraz and his split with his longtime coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero. So my reaction to that, I mean, as I'm sure a lot of people were surprised, it was a very surprise split. They just came off a successful year where we saw Alcaraz reclaim the number one ranking in the world and had an amazing performance from the clay swing all the way until the U.S. Open swing, and also he actually did do good in the Asian swing by winning Tokyo. So he had great longevity all year, very consistent. Also made the finals of the ATP finals against Yannick Sinner, and I couldn't say enough about how amazing his season was. But the split came as a huge surprise to a lot of people, and from numerous reports, it just seems like it was over a salary dispute, and also with Alcaraz's coach Juan Carlos Ferrero feeling like he wanted to spend a little bit more time at home at the same time. So I think it was just a mix of what Juan Carlos Ferrero wanted and what Alcaraz felt like was worthy. So it seems like there's no hostility between them, which is very good because they worked together for years since Alcaraz was a teenager, and he brought him in, and trained him for years, and they had such a successful partnership together, won many Grand Slams. It really, was a surprise to me, but things happen, and I'm sure Alcaraz is he's just gonna try to move forward on the year, and I'm without a doubt I still think he's gonna win most likely. In my opinion, I think he's gonna win Roland Garros. I think he's the best player on clay right now on tour, but and most likely, with this ATP tour, it's right now it's Alcaraz and Sinner versus everybody. You can't count out Novak. I mean, Novak is still hanging around, making those semifinal pushes, and I mean, and he even acknowledges that at this point in his career, he knows that Alcaraz and Sinner pose such a great challenge to him, but you can't count him out. You never know if maybe a huge upset might happen early on in one of the big slam tournaments. Australia coming up, we know that's Djokovic's kingdom. He's won so many slams there in his career. And Sinner, we know how great he is in Australia. But Alcaraz, he's never made it past the semifinals there, so that's something to keep an eye on, as the Australian Open progresses. So I do believe that either Sinner or Djokovic will win the Australian Open. I'll sit here and say that I think that will be the final. I really am confident in that, just because I know Novak has such a, you know, extraordinary experience in Australia. Sinner has won it the last 2 years, so you can expect that he's going to be going into Australia highly motivated to defend his title. And with his coach Cahill coming back after reports surfaced towards the end of last year's season that Cahill was going to be stepping away from being Sinner's head coach and officially retiring from his head coaching duties. But now that he's coming back, I think that just leaves, Yannick Sinner all dangerous, and he'll be, who knows, he'll be improving as the season progresses. So when we look at the ATP side, I think when we predict who will be winning the big four slams, I believe that it will either be Sinner or Novak in Australia. Like I said, I think Alcaraz will take Roland Garros. And for Wimbledon, Wimbledon is it can be unpredictable sometimes just because the grass season is so short. I mean, and it's players have such little time to adjust to the surface after a long clay season, and but I will see Alcaraz in the final, and I mean, I would love to see Novak back in a final in a Grand Slam. I mean, at this point in his career, he's fighting and scratching his way through these tournaments and making it to semifinals. But it seems like once he reaches the semifinals, he reaches that wall of Sinner or Alcaraz, and sometimes he struggles with his endurance. So that's something to keep an eye on too. But I I hope it's gonna be Alcaraz and Djokovic in the final. But since Sinner won it last year and proved that he can be a dominant force on grass, most likely we can expect a Sinner Alcaraz final there. So, and the U.S. Open, I think the U.S. Open this year will be, I would say, I think it will depend who has the better August hard court swing, because that's really what we saw, in 2025. We saw, you know, Alcaraz just, he took that time off after Wimbledon, came back to Cincinnati, won his title, and he was dominant all tournament. I mean, Sinner got, you know, he got sick in the final, but that doesn't take away from how dominant Alcaraz was playing, and it was just a masterful performance. And he took that rhythm and energy into the U.S. Open, and he was just sensational. He was by far the best player, playing very clean, explosive, dynamic, a lot of variety, and it just seemed like he could withstand anything that any of his opponents were throwing at him. Sinner, it just seems like Sinner was struggling with a little bit of fitness, whatever it may be, but he did show his consistency that he's still, one of those top two contenders for the titles in whatever tournament he competes in. So I think we can expect him to definitely come back stronger this year. I'm going to be honest, I'm leaning towards Sinner this year, 2026, for him to win the U.S. Open. I think because, he's shown that he can have a successful August hard court swing. So I think with Cahill coming back too, I really think that this will be the one where he kind of like reestablishes himself into the picture of that part of the calendar. So those are my predictions for the top four slams. We have Sinner or Novak for Australia. We have Carlos for Roland Garros. We have Alcaraz for Wimbledon, and I believe that Sinner will win the U.S. Open. And then we can throw in the ATP Finals as well. I mean, I'm just gonna go with Sinner just because it's played in Italy and he's got the home crowd advantage, so they're gonna be supporting him throughout, and it will be an atmosphere that he thrives in. Especially indoors. He showed that in Paris and in Torino that he can just be explosive. He can dictate the points consistently. So I think this is a time where he's gonna definitely thrive. And yeah, so those are my notable predictions for the season for the ATP side. I think some other players that will definitely step up this year. I mean, hopefully we can see someone else, like someone new, someone young, come into the picture and be like that third man, kind of like how Novak was with Rafa and Roger. And I think, we might get that. It just depends, what we see and if someone is willing to, really be consistent on tour. At the moment, if I had to think, excuse me, if I had to think on who would be that third man, it would definitely have to be someone young. I really thought it was going to be Jacob Benchik, but after he won his first big title, the Masters 1000 in Miami in March of 2025, I don't know. It just seemed like he fell off. He struggled to find consistency on tour, and he wasn't really winning. Like he wasn't really winning consistently. Like he would struggle to win two matches in a row. I remember I'm pretty sure it was from June, August. Like he would win his first match, like first round, but then he would lose his second match. It was such a strange pattern. So we'll see if this year he can step up to the plate. I mean, he's got a powerful serve, and I think in environments where the ball moves fast, he will thrive. Well, he could definitely turn it up in Australia. I think last year he definitely was showing some promise, but unfortunately he lost, I'm pretty sure, to Davidovich Fokina, where he was up actually 2-0, and then Fokina came back and won in 5. So that is something to look forward to for Menchik. We'll see if he can kind of reassert himself into that conversation of being one of those consistent top players on tour. And another player that I would think of right now, I mean, I want to say Zverev, but it just seems like he's like every year he's showing that he can be a leading contender, but I don't know. It just seems like he has like a wall. It just seems like he reaches that point where he can't, you know, make it past like Sinner or Alcaraz or even Djokovic, or even Taylor Fritz. He's struggled against Fritz for a long time now, so I think he sometimes makes some good pushes, but sometimes you know if something's off, it's just hard to picture him like really doing something. So I would have to say that I think another person besides Menchik, I would love to see Medvedev back in the picture. I mean, Medvedev has won a slam before. He's had some amazing performances against top players like Sinner, Novak, Zverev, other great players, and there were moments, where you thought that he would, he found his groove last season, but once the slams came, it just seems like something was off, losing first round matches and in surprising fashion. I mean, against like the notable one for me was, I would say, Roland Garros against Cameron Norrie, just because he beat Norrie in Rome just a few weeks prior to that. So if I was like predicting that match, I would have easily said Medvedev was going to win that and try to move and get some rhythm going into the tournament. But he has made it well known that he's not a big fan of playing on clay. So maybe who knows what happened that day. We'll see if he can have a better consistent year this year. And I would love to see him back. He's a great player. I mean, I'm sure, he wants to reestablish himself. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. But for now, I think that's what we can say about the ATP Tour. But I hope we can get a third man in the picture. I think that will be fun for everyone, because eventually after a while, we want to see more players, battle for big titles instead of just, two players that we see all the time. I think that's why when we had the big three, even during the big three, actually, with Rafa, Roger, and Novak, I mean, you still had players like Del Potro, you had Stan Wawrinka, a lot of great players who were Andy Murray, of course. How would I forget about Andy Murray? Andy Murray was always a leading contender for big titles, and he was pushing, everyone to the limit. Whoever he faced, everyone knew that it was going to be a grueling matchup. So I think that's one of my biggest hopes for the 2026 ATP Tour is if we can see someone else get into that title picture with Sinner and Alcaraz. And for now, that third man would be Novak, just because he's shown that he can still make some serious runs and slams. So for now, we just got to wait and see what happens. But that is my take and my prediction for the 2026 ATP Tour. And now we move into the WTA, which personally, after the 2025 season, like the WTA Tour really just got my attention. I mean, so many amazing moments and amazing matches, and I'm just a huge fan of the consistency from so many players, and just I love the passion that you see these women put into their games. So I think Sabalenka will win the Australian Open. I'm going to come out outright and just say that I really think she wants to avenge that loss last year against Madison Keys. It was definitely a tough loss for her, on the verge of being the first woman in years to three-peat. Actually, I'll have to double check that, but she was on the verge of, making history in some capacity with winning her third, but unfortunately it didn't happen. And yeah, it's just you know, some tournaments, you're not in your rhythm. You can't establish yourself, and there were some moments where I thought Sabalenka was gonna lose in Australia. I really thought she was gonna lose at one point to Clara Tauson. I think that's her name. She put up a fabulous performance against Sabalenka. At one point, she had Sabalenka on her heels, and yeah, it was just something that by the time the final came and you saw how Madison Keys was playing, even though Sabalenka had a winning record against Madison Keys, I did not, think that she was going to lose. So, but I think she's going to avenge herself this year, especially after winning the U.S. Open and kind of getting that feeling of winning a slam again, and getting over that mental hurdle of coming up short when you're right near the finish line, making semifinals or finals and not being able to get over that tiny little hump. So I think that US Open win for her over Amanda Anisimova was crucial for her confidence and just overall momentum going into the 2026 season. And for Roland Garros, I really think it's going to be wide open just because, there's so many women on tour who are amazing on clay. When I think of top clay players, I think of, Iga Swiatek. She was dominant at Roland Garros before 2025. She won so many times there, and everyone would assume that she wants to reestablish and, take her throne back at Roland Garros. But also you have Sabalenka, who's shown that she can compete on clay. I mean, she's performed amazing at the Madrid Open and one of those Master 1000 tournaments before Roland Garros, and then Coco Gauff, who won Roland Garros in last year against Sabalenka. She's shown that she can play well on clay, and also I think of Qinwen Zhang. I mean, she had an amazing record on clay for a long time, and then she lost to Sabalenka in 2025 at Roland Garros. And I mean, Amanda Nisimova, I mean, I think out of all the surfaces, I think that would be like the one that you would least expect her to be the most dominant, because I think grass, she's shown that she can really, find a way to get that good spin and power on the ball. And then hardcourt, she's an amazing hardcourt player without a doubt. But with clay, I think that's something we're going to have to just wait and see when the time comes, when the clay season starts. And I believe that, you know, when we have, like, I would say, players and, you know, who are dominant on all surfaces, it's just going to be a matter of, like, what will happen when, one player loses early. Like, let's say if Iga gets eliminated early and you have players still remaining like Sabalenka and Coco, how will they, rise to the occasion and take advantage of that open field? And overall, I think Roland Garros will be wide open, but I'm just going to say I'm going to go with Iga, because I think Iga, with that win she had at Wimbledon and, finally overcoming her challenges, throughout the early half of 2025, because she was having some problems, especially on clay. She was, you know, she had that surprising loss to Danielle Collins in Rome. And, after she beat Collins so many times. So I would say that I think Iga will find a way to win it. And it's wide open, but I got to go with Iga. I think she wants to really reclaim that title and prove that she can still be one of the best players on tour. And of course she is. She had a, good second half of 2025, but some little hiccups there towards the end, but I think she proved that she can still be a leading contender. For Wimbledon, I'm going to go with Sabalenka, only because Sabalenka in 2023 and in 2025 she made semifinals. So I think she's hungry to get that title. That's one of the titles that, in terms of Grand Slams, that she hasn't won yet. She has yet to win Roland Garros or Wimbledon, but I think she knows that her better chances will be at Wimbledon, considering that she's had some good performances and good runs the last two times she's been there, because she missed 2024 due to her taking some time off. I think she wants to, really give it all she has and take that title. So I think 2026 Wimbledon woman champion will be Sabalenka. And for the US Open, I think it's just going to be a matter of, because the US Open's interesting because it's the last slam of the year, and then you have, someone like, some players who are really burned out after having some deep runs in long tournaments before. And next thing you know, it's like a player that you may not expect to make a deep run at the US Open suddenly just comes out of nowhere and has that good push. So I think when we look at some top players, like, I mean, Amanda Anisimova got my attention. She's shown that she can compete on specifically on hard court and grass. Like I said, on clay, that's yet to be determined. I want to see how she does this year, but I really think that she will be a leading contender there. I want to say Elena Rybakina just because, like, she's shown with her coach returning, Volkov, he's back coaching her, and that ever since he came back, Rybakina was just starting to just play like a top three player in the world. Her serve just became phenomenal, especially indoors. But it seems like she just struggles a little bit at the U.S. Open, so I'm a little bit hesitant on that. I want to say her, but I, I I would really have to go with Sabalenka. I just think Sabalenka this year, she will have a dominant year because if we look at her 2025, she made deep runs in so many tournaments. And it was either, making a final or semifinals. So when you look at that trajectory, you can almost expect her to be, a leading contender. And of course, she has to be. She's the number one player in the world. And if I had to think of someone who would be in the final with her, it would probably be, I think, Anisimova or Coco. But if Coco, she needs to fix her serve. She needs to find that rhythm of consistency. She's shown that she can compete when she's playing well. Like, and when she's playing well and she's not having issues with her serve, she's definitely a top contender. But I would have to put either Anisimova. I mean, Pegula too. Jessica Pegula, she's shown that she can be a serious threat for anyone on hard court. I mean, she took a set off Sabalenka in the U.S. Open, and it seemed like for a little bit that she was going to beat her, but that didn't happen. But we got to see what Pegula can bring to the table this year because she's getting a little bit older now. She's not too old yet. She's in her early 30s, so she can still go. But it just seems like now every year will have more value to her. So maybe that can be a sign of urgency for her to really try to step up and try to have an opportunity at playing in another final for a Grand Slam title. And I would say I'm trying to think of who would compete against Sabalenka in the final because I just think it comes down to who has energy, who's playing well in a good rhythm. So I think it would most likely, let's just leave it like this: Sabalenka versus an American women's player. Let's just leave it like that. So it can be Anisimova, it can be Coco, it can be Pegula because the Americans, they turn it up and they like to play next level at the U.S. Open because you know it's their home. That's for them that's the most exciting tournament of the year. So let's just say Sabalenka versus an American opponent. And then for the WTA finals, I mean, I'm gonna just go with someone who serves really hard, who's like someone. I know Rybakina won it, but we'll see if she can have that consistency again this year. I believe she can. So you never know. Actually, Rybakina, she could end up in the finals against Sabalenka in Australia or even Wimbledon. Rybakina won Wimbledon at one point in 2022. She she has made some deep runs before. She actually played in the final, I believe, against Sabalenka in 2023 when Sabalenka won her first slam title. So I think going into Australia, I would say that Sabalenka and Rybakina are the top two leading contenders for the title. And then, but going back to the WTA finals, which is the last, prestigious title of the year, I would just say since it's an indoor tournament, it just has to be someone who hits with power. So when I think of power, I would think of Sabalenka, Rybakina, or Nisimova. So I think one of those three will win it. But if I had to make a prediction right now, I'm gonna go with Rybakina. I just think Rybakina serve, and she seemed very comfortable in Riyadh, back in November. So I think it will be a tournament that she thrives in, and I'm looking forward to it because I enjoyed watching the WTA finals this past season, and it was some good matchups, some entertaining moments. So we'll see what happens. And when I think of you know what I want to see, like I said, I want to see a third man come into the picture. In terms of the WTA, I would love to see if a player can really go for all four slams in one year. I feel like we haven't seen in women's tennis in a long time where one player just has like such dominance where someone goes for all four slams. Like that would just be magnificent. So I would say that's like on my want list for what I want to see from the WTA Tour in 2026. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited. You know, it's almost here. 40 minutes to go. You know, we got the United Cup coming, and then we'll have Brisbane commencing on around the 4th. So in about a few days, I'm pretty sure on Sunday, beginning of the week, Sunday or Monday, that's when the matches will start taking place. You know, and yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to the new season, and this is going to be a sport that I really enjoy covering for you guys. So I'm excited to see what happens, and looking forward to keeping up with the tournaments, some live commentary on some of the big games too, because that's going to be on my bucket list to commentate live commentary for you guys to stay here and on a live stream and have me commentate on big games. So something I'm looking forward to, and yeah, that's it for today's video. Like I said, I hope you guys had a great New Year's Eve, and are looking forward to a fabulous 2026. Thank you guys again. If you haven't, please like, subscribe, take it easy.